Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Last time we discussed about dorsal column, medial lemniscus system, and anterior or ventral spinothalamic tract. Today about lateral spinothalamic tract. Lateral spinothalamic tract. This tract, it carries impulses of pain and temperature. Pain and temperature. First order nerve fibers carrying these impulses enter the spinal cord through posterior nerve root. So first order nerve fibers carrying impulses of pain, temperature enter spinal cord through posterior nerve root. So these nerve fibers synapse with neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3. In lamina 1, 2, 3, including substantia gelatinosa. So I told you that first order nerve fibers synapse with neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3, including substantia gelatinosa. From lamina 1, 2, 3, second order nerve fibers arise. Second order nerve fibers arise from lamina 1, 2, 3, and these cross over to the opposite side. These cross over to the opposite side. You see, these are the second order nerve fibers which cross over to the opposite side obliquely. So these obliquely cross over to the opposite side to enter the lateral white column on the opposite side. To enter the lateral white column on the opposite side. The tract is formed in the lower part of spinal cord. Is formed in the lower part of the spinal cord. As the tract ascends, fibers from the upper parts of the body. As the tract ascends, fibers from the upper parts of the body join the tract after crossing over, and these join the tract medial, or you say anteromedial. Anteromedially, fibers from the upper parts of the body join the tract. When the tract ascends in the spinal cord, fibers from the lower parts are posterolateral, while fibers from the upper parts are anteromedial. So keep in mind, second order nerve fibers arise from the neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3. These cross over to the opposite side, enter the white column of the opposite side to form the tract. The tract is formed in the lower parts of the spinal cord. So fibers from the lower parts are posterolateral, while fibers from the upper parts of the body, these are anteromedial. Now the tract enters the medulla oblongata. In the medulla oblongata, this tract joins the spinal lemniscus. It joins the spinal lemniscus. I mentioned last time that spinal lemniscus is composed of three tracts. anterior spinothalamic, lateral spinothalamic, and spinotactal. Spinotactal. So anterior spinothalamic, lateral spinothalamic, and spinotactal tract, these constitute the spinal lemniscus. So spinal lemniscus, it ascends to the medulla, pons, and then the tract fibers synapse into the VPL, ventral posterolateral nucleus. That is VPL into the ventral posterolateral nucleus of the thalamus. Right? So spinal lemniscus, it ascends to the medulla, pons, midbrain, and enter the thalamus, where these fibers, the synapse into ventral posterolateral nucleus of thalamus. From this nucleus, third order nerve fibers arise, and these pass through the internal capsule, posterior limb of internal capsule, to terminate into the somatosensory area in the cerebral cortex. To terminate into the somatosensory area in the cerebral cortex. So this is the pathway of the lateral spinothalamic tract, carrying impulses of pain and temperature. Pain and temperature. Keep in mind that there are two types of pain: fast pain and slow pain. Fast pain and slow pain. I have discussed the pathway of this tract. This is the pathway of temperature and fast pain impulses. It is the pathway of temperature and fast pain impulses. Temperature and fast pain impulses. Now here at this time, at this stage, I discussed the pathway of fast pain impulses and also the pathway of slow pain impulses. Pathway of fast pain impulses and then the pathway of slow pain impulses. So first about the pathway of fast pain impulses. Fast pain impulses. Which nerve fibers carry fast pain impulses from the periphery to spinal cord? A delta nerve fibers. A delta nerve fibers. So A delta nerve fibers carry fast pain impulses from the periphery to spinal cord. We discussed that in the spinal cord in lamina 1, 2, 3. First order nerve fibers synapse with the second order neurons. So first order nerve fibers synapse with the second order neurons. At this synapse, for fast pain pathway, the neurotransmitter is glutamate. So glutamate is the neurotransmitter at the synapse between A delta nerve fibers and neurons of the lamina 1, 2, 3, or you say second order neurons in the lamina 1, 2, 3. So don't forget that at the synapse between A delta nerve fibers and second order neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3, the neurotransmitter is glutamate. Right? And then the fast pain impulses follow the pathway which I have discussed about the lateral spinothalamic tract. So glutamate is the neurotransmitter in the pathway of fast pain impulses. It is released at the synapse between A delta nerve fibers and the second order neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3. So the pathway of the fast pain impulses is also called neospinothalamic tract. It's called neospinothalamic tract. Neospinothalamic tract. Now about the pathway of slow pain impulses. Pathway of slow pain impulses. Which nerve fibers carry slow pain impulses from the periphery to spinal cord? C fibers. So C fibers carry slow pain impulses from the periphery to spinal cord. Now at the synapse between C fibers and second order neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3, the neurotransmitter is substance P. Substance P is the neurotransmitter between C nerve fibers, and the second order neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3. So substance P is neurotransmitter in the slow pain pathway, right? It is neurotransmitter at the synapse between C nerve fibers and the neurons, second order neurons in lamina 1, 2, 3. So don't forget, neurotransmitter in the fast pain impulses is glutamate. And neurotransmitter in the slow pain impulses is substance P. Now moreover, slow pain fibers have different terminations. Slow pain fibers have different terminations. Slow pain fibers go to the reticular formation, tectum of the midbrain, and periaqueductal gray matter. Right? So I am telling that slow pain fibers don't go to VPL, ventral posterolateral nucleus thalamus. Slow pain fibers go to the reticular formation of the tectum of midbrain, and also periaqueductal gray matter in the midbrain. Some slow pain fibers go to the midline and intralaminar nuclei of the thalamus. So some slow pain fibers, these go to midline and intralaminar nuclei of thalamus. So these don't go to VPL, ventral posterolateral nucleus. So slow pain impulses pathway nerve fibers go to the reticular formation, tectum of the midbrain, periaqueductal gray matter. Some slow pain fibers go to the midline and intralaminar nuclei of the thalamus. Right? So this pathway of slow pain impulses is also called periospinothalamic tract. Periospinothalamic tract. So pathway of fast pain impulses is called neospinothalamic tract, and the neurotransmitter is glutamate. Pathway of slow pain impulses is called periospinothalamic tract, and neurotransmitter is substance P. So this was about the lateral spinothalamic tract and then the fast pain pathway and slow pain pathway I have discussed is separate. So this was about the anterolateral system or spinothalamic tract. Next group of sensory tracts is spinocerebellar tract. Spinocerebellar tract. As the name indicates, the tract fibers arise from spinal cord, and these go to the cerebellum. So from spinal cord, it go to the cerebellum. Spinocerebellar tracts are composed of myelinated, fast-conducting nerve fibers. So these tracts are composed of myelinated, fast-conducting nerve fibers. The velocity of conduction along these fibers may be 120 meters per second. So velocity may be 120 meters per second. There are two types of spinocerebellar tract: posterior spinocerebellar tract and anterior spinocerebellar tract. So first about posterior spinocerebellar tract. First order nerve fibers carrying impulses enter the spinal cord through posterior nerve root. So first order nerve fibers enter the spinal cord through posterior nerve root. These nerve fibers synapse with second order neurons, in Clark's column or nucleus dorsalis. So these nerve fibers synapse with second order neurons located in Clark's column or nucleus dorsalis. So this Clark's column is present at the base of the posterior gray column. Present at the base of the posterior gray column. From Clark's column or nucleus dorsalis, second order nerve fibers arise. So from Clark's column, second order nerve fibers arise, which enter the posterolateral right column to form the posterior spinocerebellar tract. The tract fibers do not cross. They don't cross. These enter the posterolateral right spinal cord on the same side to form the tract. The tract ascends through spinal cord to enter the medulla oblongata. In the medulla, the tract fibers through inferior cerebellar peduncle go into cerebellum. In the medulla oblongata, the tract fibers, these enter the inferior cerebellar peduncle to go into the cerebellum. The tract fibers in the cerebellum terminate into the vulvus and intermediate zone on the same side. So the tract fibers in the cerebellum terminate into the vulvus and intermediate zone on the same side. Clark's column is present in segments of spinal cord, first thoracic, to lumbar third or fourth. First thoracic to lumbar third or fourth. So fibers from the upper limbs and fibers from the lower parts, these join the tract. They join this tract. So what is the function of this posterior spinocerebellar tract? This tract carries information, impulses from proprioceptors to the cerebellum. So these carry impulses from the proprioceptors to the cerebellum. These carry impulses from the muscle spindles about the change in the muscle length, impulses from the Golgi tendon organ about the muscle tension, and impulses from the Ruffini's end organ and Pacinian corpuscles about the movements in the joints, right? So these proprioceptors respond to change in position and movement. So from the proprioceptors, impulses are carried by the posterior spinocerebellar tract to the cerebellum. Cerebellum uses this information to coordinate movements of the limbs and to maintain the posture. Cerebellum will use this information to coordinate movements of the limbs and to maintain the posture. So this is the function of the posterior spinocerebellar tract. Now we come to the anterior spinocerebellar tract. Anterior spinocerebellar tract. First order nerve fibers carrying impulses enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. First order nerve fibers enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. And these nerve fibers synapse with second order neurons. Synapse with second order neurons located near Clark's column. Right? So these synapses with second order neurons located near the Clark's column. Second order nerve fibers arise from here. Second order nerve fibers arise from here. These cross over to the opposite side. These cross over to the opposite side to enter the lateral white column on the opposite side to form the tract. So second order nerve fibers arise from neurons near Clark's column. These cross over to the opposite side to enter the lateral white column or spinal cord on the opposite side to form the tract. To form the tract. The tract ascends in the spinal cord to enter cerebellum, then pons and midbrain. Pons and midbrain. Now in the midbrain, the tract fibers enter the superior cerebellar peduncle. In the midbrain, the tract fibers enter the superior cerebellar peduncle to go into cerebellum. So in the midbrain, the tract fibers enter the superior cerebellar peduncle to go into the cerebellum. Before termination into cerebellum, the tract fibers cross over. The tract fibers cross over. Keep in mind, crossing occurred in the spinal cord. and the fibers which cross over in the spinal cord cross back. The fibers which cross over in spinal cord cross back and then terminate, and these nerve fibers terminate in the cerebellum into the vermis and intermediate zone on both sides. So the tract fibers cross back in the cerebellum before termination and then terminate into the vermis and the intermediate zones in the cerebellum on both sides. So intermediate zone on both sides, into these both sides of the zones, the tract fibers terminate. Right? Now here, keep in mind the tract fibers of the anterior cerebellar tract, which crossed over in the spinal cord, crossed back in the cerebellum before termination. This tract, it also carries impulses from the proprioceptors to cerebellum. The tract carries impulses from the proprioceptor to cerebellum. And cerebellum use these impulses to coordinate movements of the limbs and postural maintenance. So postural maintenance and limb movement coordination is carried out by cerebellum with the help of these impulses. Another function of the anterior spinocerebellar tract is that this tract informs the cerebellum. This tract, which tract? Anterior spinocerebellar tract. It informs the cerebellum about the motor impulses, which have arrived the ventral horn of spinal cord along the corticospinal and rubrospinal tract. I am telling you that another important function of anterior spinocerebellar tract is that it informs the cerebellum about the motor impulses which have arrived the ventral horn of the spinal cord along the corticospinal and rubrospinal tract. So don't forget this function of this tract, that it provides information to cerebellum about the motor impulses which have arrived the ventral horn of spinal cord along the corticospinal and rubrospinal tracts. Right? So this was about the spinocerebellar tract. I've discussed about the posterior spinocerebellar tract and then the anterior spinocerebellar tract.